exciting. We've just gone live. Yes. Cool. Right, so we are live. This is the Community Engineering podcast. Today's topic is GraphQL. We'll also be giving a bit of an update on the community engineering of the last month. I'm currently in a hotel in Milan, so if the internet is bad, I'm very sorry. I'll do my best. Yeah, so let's start with giving a quick update on community engineering. And then after that, we'll jump into the GraphQL topic. So the first thing I'd like to share with everyone is some stats for stats for March. So during the month of March, we had 414 pull requests across all our public repositories, which is an amazing number. We had an acceptance rate of 80%, which is also fantastic. And we had some new contributions. We had 82 new contributors and 188 contributors in total over the month of March. For me, these stats stand out as pretty amazing. If you compare those to October, which is when we had our Squashtober Fest event, they are pretty similar in terms of how many pull requests we got from the community, from everyone. But the contributors and the new contributors are 20 up. So that is fantastic to see. So we just want to extend a huge thank you to everyone over the last month who has contributed, everyone that has been working hard with the distributed contribution day, which we had, which I hope everyone enjoyed. Yeah, and so we wanted to highlight one specific thing that's happened relatively recently, which is the bulk API, or the asynchronous bulk API stuff. And this was developed by a couple of agencies. One of them was Comrap in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany. And basically, these guys got together and kind of asked us, they wanted to get involved, and we put these agencies together. We helped them out from a technical design point of view. And this has been merged, as far as I'm correct, Eugene, you can feel free to correct me, was merged into 2.3 and developed and will be released as part of the next, or the up and coming release. What I love to see about this is it's not just individual contributor, but it is people working together to fix problem, or to bring in solutions to the system that a lot of agencies have been having or requiring. And these agencies got together, and we were able to listen to their desires, listen to their needs from their real world experience, and able to bring in what I think is a fantastic solution. There is a demo here, so we're about to post an article on this as well, but at the moment there is a blog you can see here from Comrap, and this includes a demo of the system. So I'd highly recommend, if you have some time and wanna get into it, that this is the place to do it. And it's been great to see this sort of contribution. We of course still have our projects such as MSI and our PHP 7.2 contribution coming along, as well as import-export, and of course the main repository. So if you want to get involved, if you've not been involved in contribution, then feel free to reach out to one of the team, and we will do our best to get you involved, whether that being through our Slack channel or getting you introduced into one of our projects, or which issues, how to pick out which issues you feel like. I've also been talking with the PWA guys And we had Andrew here at Mage Titans in Italy, and he did a fantastic job. And one of the things that he raised was also in terms of contributing to the PWA studio that's coming along. So we're going to share with you a bit more information in the up and coming weeks or months as to how you can get involved. And because I know a lot of people out there, it's great, there's contribution involvement for back-end stuff, but front-end stuff, we want to help people getting involved with the PWA studio specifically. So that information will be on its way. If you're in the Slack channel, there is a PWA studio group, and I'd recommend joining there and just asking Andrew or James how best to get involved. So that is pretty much it from the stats side of stuff. The only other thing I'd like to raise is that during Imagine, there will be a hackathon on the Saturday and Sunday. So if you're around, feel free to register for that and get yourself down. And we will have some contribution projects. We will have some great stuff coming up from that point of view. So if you are there, please let us know that you will be there. And so we can, so register, get yourself a t-shirt, get yourself down to the win on the Saturday and Sunday and get involved in some contribution. But with that, I'd like to hand over, and we're going to talk about, we've got a great presentation about GraphQL, especially for you guys for today. So I'd like to hand over. So yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Hey guys, hope you can see my screen. And I'm Alex Palarush, and I am architect for GraphQL track. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we have in GraphQL up to date and what is place of GraphQL in Magento Web APIs and what is our vision for GraphQL. So I believe you can see my screen now, right?
Yeah, screen's being shared.
Okay, so I have a brief plan, and let's start from technical vision for Web APIs, and particularly I will focus on GraphQL. So you can see this diagram which displays where is the place of Web API. So we have Web APIs which are using our domain models, and you can see that Web API module which currently implements REST and SOAP support. It relies on service contracts over here. And if you look at this part, this is GraphQL, you can notice that it's mostly going to use query API eventually, and it is implemented in form of GraphQL query resolvers. So we are not using service contracts to expose our GraphQL API. You have probably seen one of early prototypes from Eugene Tulika where he exposed service contracts as GraphQL APIs, but this is not how we're going to have it in 2.3. And also we can take a look at this diagram. It displays different types of integrations, like integration with admin panel, and you can see that it will mostly be done by REST and SOAP APIs. And you can see storefront integration, and it is supposed to be done via GraphQL. And GraphQL in its turn, it will rely on query API, which is going to be implemented after 2.3.0. And also it relies on service contracts for mutations. So if you have, for example, a category view page, you will use query API, or if you have GraphQL mutation for adding product to your cart, it will rely on service contracts. And you can notice also that query API will most likely rely on indexes whenever possible, and only in cases where we don't have indexes, we will just rely on regular normalized storage. And this is supposed to give us extraordinary performance for GraphQL queries, because we will be able to map those directly into SQL queries, so we will bypass service contracts. And obviously, you can get much higher performance if you construct, let's say, one query instead of making 10 independent queries database. And another benefit is obviously that you can make complex queries from your client application to combine all required data in one query. So you have to make just one query to render your whole page instead of making 5-10 queries which you currently need, let's say, in REST. And you can also notice this this block, which basically says that it is supposed to be possible to use GraphQL API directly from PHP clients. So we are going to provide some service which will accept queries, let's say, from blocks, and it will allow us to avoid additional calls via network. Yeah, so probably that's it, what I wanted to tell you, like about overview about GraphQL. And now we can dive a little bit deeper. So first of all, we can look at what we have in GraphQL at the moment. We focused on product support, and also we support category rendering page. And obviously, if you have ever worked with GraphQL, so you know that you probably need some kind of tool to work with GraphQL. And the one which we use most of the cases is graphical. It's available in form of plugins for browsers, so you can specify your endpoint. Actually, we will look at it later, but you can specify endpoint URL here, and then you get like all type hinting, so you can navigate through the schema, and you can write your queries over here, and then you run your queries just by pressing this button, and you see response in this part of the window. So I believe that it's about introduction about GraphQL. And if you don't know what is GraphQL, you probably should read about it. And I assume that most of people who join this call, they already know what GraphQL is. And we can look at implementation and some functionality that we have. So as you can see, I'm mostly using our DevDocs pages. And this is documentation for our pre-release, so for 2.3, which is not public yet. But we are keeping these documents up to date, and in most cases they reflect the state of our 2.3 develop branch which we have. Okay, so let me see. Maybe I can just show you a couple examples. I'll just go to my graphical, and I will show you how those requests can be executed. So I have sample data installed on one of my instances, and you can see this regular Magento instance 2.3 with sample data, and this is my graphical where I use my instances URL as endpoint. So you can see I like set endpoint, and then I can navigate through schema inspector, and I can see like one of the benefits of GraphQL that it has strict typing, and you can see the whole schema if you want, and you can navigate through it. So let's say here's my products query, and I can see what parameters it accepts. And then if I'm wondering, okay, what is filter, I can dig down, and I can see like what fields are supported as part of this product filter input. And then I can obviously read documentation for this, like for any field that we have. And I can dig down until I get to scalar types. And scalar types are basically like types which are defined by GraphQL. So this is probably a general overview of the schema. And on this side, I have query window, and I can make simple query to request products which were created after this specific date. And I said that I want to have 25 products per page, and I want to sort my results by price. So you can notice like we have price value over here, and you can notice that it was like sorted in descending order. And also one of the new features which was requested was actually rendering filters for layered navigation. It was delivered to mainline just yesterday. And basically over here, like if you make request for filters, you can specify additional field if you want. And say so you can see this is like response. Now I modified my request and send it again, and I can see additional field added to the response. And this is the list of filters which can be used to render layered navigation block. And also you can see like whatever I request here, whatever fields I'm requesting here, I get the same structure in the response. So again, we can see that. Let's say I want to get description, and I just edit and send request, and here go, like you have description which you can use for rendering your category page. And we can look at a couple more examples. Particularly, I want to highlight that we have filters which support, like this is end condition, like by default. And let's say I can send this request, and I get products which match this SKU pattern and which have price less than $50. So you can notice that SKU matches this 24 MB pattern, and the price is less than $50. Okay, so find some other example with OR filter. So we also support OR filters, and the syntax is as follows. You can say basically use this filter and then list all fields that you want to join using OR condition, and we can make this request. And basically it should be bags, or SKU should have like 24 MB in its name. So let's see what we have. We have some matching by SKU, and I don't think we have any bags, but actually this one's also oh actually yeah, this one is matched by the name. I don't know if you have any questions. Should we accept questions now or maybe later?
If there's any questions, we'll do them at the end. We'll do a Q&A section at the end. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically an overview of what we have. And I would like to mention that after we have Query API implemented, most likely after 2.3.0, we should expect support for basically arbitrary nesting level in queries. At the moment, we still rely on search criteria in Magento, and as you know, search criteria don't support like unlimited nesting, and we cannot use like filters like OR and then again OR and something else. So we support, I believe, 2 levels of filtering at the moment. But at least we have parity with our REST API at the moment. Okay, so then no questions about functionality. I can switch to demonstrating how you as extension developer will be implementing new coverage. And yeah, basically I'll just go to the code. So this is the base schema which we have in GraphQL module, and it defines some basic entities. And you can notice that query which we have here is empty, and I believe it's usually not valid syntax for GraphQL schemas. At least PHP library called Webonics, it doesn't support it. But what we did, we extended native support for schemas with schema stitching, and now we basically support modularity for GraphQL schemas. And it allows us to define parts of the schema or extensions in different modules. And for that, we didn't have to modify Webonics library. We're still using that library under the hood, but we just created a wrapper for it, and we added this functionality. And let's just look quickly what we have in schema. So this is pretty standard schema with one exception, that we add a couple more features to allow the schema stitching. So we have documentation. directive. It is custom documentation which we introduced. And as you notice, like over here, we have all these fields and types, everything is documented. And all the documentation is coming from these declarations. And then this is, again, pretty much standard GraphQL notation. And I can also mention that initially we implemented the schemas in form of XML files, but we got feedback from community that it's probably easier for everyone to learn SDL, GraphQL schema, because people who want to work with GraphQL, they will have to learn anyway, and it's more natural to define your schema in SDL format. And that's why we actually eliminated XML support and we added SDL support. So let's look at some schema for specific module. And we can see that here we have definitions for query. And these are actually queries which we support, at least which are provided by catalog. And you can see here all parameters required. Again, we saw those in GraphQL, but this is how you define it. And you define like your field, you say what type that field is, what documentation is, and also our custom directive allows us to set resolvers. So resolver is actually implementation which fetches the data. So it is responsible for fetching this specific field. And in GraphQL, you can have resolvers, custom resolvers for every field in any level. So what else? Maybe we can look at resolver just to see how it looks like and what interface it has. So as I mentioned, like as extension developer, you are supposed to define schema in this format, and then to instruct GraphQL how to fetch your data, you have to define this resolver and you have to declare it. And all resolvers have to implement resolver interface that we have. And then over here, you have access to your arguments, you have access to value from parent resolver. You have a resolver info abstract syntax tree, which is giving you like a lot of details if you need those. But most likely, let's look at this example. Like, let's say this specific resolver doesn't need info, and I believe it relies only on arguments. Like you can see that arguments are used, and then value is not used, and info is also not used. And context is something that can be used to pass data between resolvers in scope of same query. I would say it is probably discouraged to use this context because it works as registry, which you can just pass around, and it basically holds some kind of global state. So it's better to avoid it, but it is still here because it is more or less standard implementation for resolver interface and supported. And this is object which represents declaration of this field in SDL schema. Like this field is eventually parsed into our internal structure, and it is represented like all fields and all types and everything that you can see in the schema is eventually converted into a structure like of objects, into trio objects. And you can use those objects to access any declarations which you made in the schema. So again, here, for example, we use it like to get the name of the field. And I also can show you, I just made a print screen of what is actually contained in these fields when you get those fields. Like you can see that in arguments, you get exactly those fields which are listed in the schema, like you get filter, page size, current page, sorting. Then context, as I mentioned, it is just some object which holds and potentially transfers global state between different resolvers, so we don't use it. And then this is like object representation of config element, particularly like of field config element. and you have resolver info, which is pretty complex object, but which potentially can be useful, especially if you need to build something complex like those queries with unlimited nesting. At least in our prototypes for query API, we had to use resolver info for those purposes. Yeah, so basically that's probably it. If you have more questions, I believe you will be able to ask later. But as I mentioned, like in your schema, like one of the important parts is that, let's say I have this currency enum declared here, but I'm still able to declare this currency enum once again in my extension, and I can just add, let's say, extra values to the enum, and they will be merged according to the same rules which are used for any other Magento configs. Like you have those module merge sequence, which is defined by module XML, and the same rules applied to these GraphQL schema files.
Okay.
I don't think you can remove anything because, so the question was how to remove something from here. I don't think it's possible because GraphQL schema is supposed to be inherently backward compatible, and usually you can add something to the schema, but you cannot remove. And also, I'm not sure if anyone is doing versioning for GraphQL schemas. So it's usually supposed to be unversioned and backward compatible all the time.
But deprecation still.
Probably you can deprecate it. We have not introduced special directives yet for that. And again, just to highlight, so this is currently phase 1. It's not production ready. It is supposed to be like preview and version of the code which can be used by early adopters. If you want to implement your coverage, you can do that. And the last part which I wanted to cover is community project, which I created just a couple of days ago, and we eventually would like to get support from community and develop some features together with community. And today we got, or yesterday we got latest pieces of the code for GraphQL merged, which we plan to release as part of Phase 3. So like phase 1 is complete, and right now we still have a lot of improvements in our backlog, and we actually identified some items which we would like to discuss with community and maybe get community involved in the implementation of those items. I suppose I will post this project also on GraphQL. I'm sorry, on GraphQL channel on Slack, and we will eventually set up some regular meetings for that. So there is nothing set up like regular calls at the moment, but you can definitely join GraphQL channel on Slack, and if you want to join it, you don't have access to it, you can send a message to engcom@magento.com. And basically, this project is based on the branch 2.3 develop. And you can see here, actually, maybe I will go a little bit into requirements for contributions for this specific project. Like, all contributions are expected to meet definition of done. They all obviously are expected to meet our technical guidelines, which are just general for all implementations. And also for this specific project, we also need to make sure that we implement everything according to our Web API technical vision. And also all GraphQL modules are supposed to be easy to disable, enable. So we need to make sure that modularity is supported, and we also need to make sure that we are not modifying any other modules which are not related to GraphQL. And the only exception would be if you need to add extension point, which is missing, but that is something that should be discussed with core team eventually. And also I have ZenHub board, and I added several issues to this board already. And you are free to add any issues to this GitHub project, and let us know maybe on Slack channel if you would like to participate in this project, and we can definitely discuss what issues you're interested in. But I can just highlight like what issues we have identified so far, which can be interesting for community. So this is like adding API for fetching cart details. It's returning canonical product URLs within product object. It's adding available sort options for product listing, and this will allow you to render sort by block on the page. And another one is improved GraphQL caching. So at the moment, we have not invested in GraphQL caching yet. So we have some lazy loading implemented as it is recommended by Webonics, but we did not implement any caching strategy yet. And it's actually a pretty complicated topic in GraphQL. And also you can see a couple labels here, which I would like to highlight is additional coverage, which obviously is improving coverage of some functionality of Magento with GraphQL. And the other label is framework changes, which is adding features to GraphQL framework itself. Yeah, and I suppose that's all I have so far, and maybe you have any questions. And also just to mention, we also have, I believe, our product owner for GraphQL track on the line. So if you have any questions regarding product direction, I believe you can also ask these questions.
Yeah, I'm on the line. This is Misha. Hey guys. Alex, just a couple things that may be worth talking about since we have time is how we handle EAV attributes and attributes in general, and then maybe worth showing what we have for the testing framework for those who are online might be interested.
Sure, good point. So first of all, for EAV attributes, we do not create any container for those like we did in REST APIs. And we list all those attributes on top level. I can show you over here. For example, so color, it is obviously EAV attribute, and you can see that it appears on the top level. And I'm not sure like it is set for these products, but all EAV attributes are present on the top level, and you get type hinting for all of those, and you get auto completion for all those EAV attributes. And this is supposed to improve dev experience, we believe. And another point, specifically for GraphQL, we added feature which allows us to identify strict type for every EAV attribute. And this is something that wasn't possible before. And right now, like since GraphQL schema is strictly typed, all fields which we declare, including EAV attributes, they must have exact type specified. And we can look here, product interface. You see that, okay, color is defined as int eventually. Probably another point to mention, since I just looked at the schema. So we have product interface implemented. Also, we have, let's say, every physical product and some other interfaces. And eventually, every concrete implementation, the simple product or the nodal product, those implement a bunch of interfaces. And we also added one of those features for schema stitching, one of syntax sugars, which we did. You can just declare your interface. And let's say simple product declaration looks like this. If you consider it in terms of regular GraphQL schema, it is an invalid declaration because all fields which are defined in interface, they must be also defined for all implementations. But in our custom implementation, what we did, we said, okay, if you just say that specific type implements other types, all fields will be automatically copied. And the resultant schema which will be generated, it will contain all those fields like in the interface and in the implementation. And it allows us to avoid a lot of copy paste, especially considering that we have this extensibility requirements. And you can imagine, like, if you have to declare this in all modules and list all the fields, it will be just a nightmare. And for What was the other point, Misha?
The testing framework.
Okay, different framework. So we added special types of tests for GraphQL, and those are actually part of our API functional framework. However, we introduced a new base class for all those tests. And let me find some test. And this is like GraphQL abstract test case. And our tests allow you to just specify query in regular format, the same format as you would send from your client, or you would send it from graphical, and you get response in array format, which you can use to make assertions on the response. So it's pretty easy to write such tests for GraphQL.
Hi, Alex. That's Eugene Tulika. I have a question regarding what is the minimal set of steps you need to do to add new GraphQL API for your module.
Yeah, so to add new GraphQL API, you most likely will have to have new module, which follows the same you need to follow the same requirements as for any other module, and then you have to declare a new schema. Like if you are introducing new endpoints, you will have to list it in query. If you are modifying existing endpoint, you can just reference any types which are already declared anywhere else in other modules, and add additional fields. And also you have to define custom resolver, which will instruct GraphQL how to fetch the data that you want to expose as GraphQL API. And maybe you also need to declare dependency on any modules which you depend on, like you need to declare it in modules now. But this is usual step for any configuration extension. Like if you want to make sure that, let's say, your override works, you need to say load my module after the core module, and then let's say your preference for some interface will override core's one, and your override will work. If you don't do that, you basically fall back to alphabetical sorting of modules, and it's just up to accident if it works or not.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much, Alex, for that kind of introduction and showing us, GraphQL. So as always, if you're watching this, there is the live chat in YouTube. So if you have any questions for Alex or any other person that's in this call, so we also have Misha, who is the product owner, Alexei, who's anything to do with contribution, I guess, and Eugene Toluca, so the specifically contribution projects as well. So if you have anything to do with that, feel free to raise it in the chat now, and we'll get it to the guys at the moment. But what I thought would be quite good just now would be to go over the up and coming events. I briefly, while you get your questions in, I'll just head over to the events page we have and just run through a few of the up and coming events. So on the 13th to 14th of April, we have, as part of the Magento meetup at engcom, there will be a contribution day there. And that is in the Ukraine, I guess. Then on the 21st and 22nd of April, we are at the Imagine Hackathon. On the 12th of May, we have a contribution day at Frankfurt with Comrap, who are the people that, the agency that helped with the bulk API. And then on the 19th of May, we're at Deventer with a contribution day there. So those are the next contribution days confirmed for the next couple of months. And if you have any questions about contribution days or contributions in general, then feel free to reach out to us. Email is engcom@magento.com, or contact one of the team in the Slack channel. And we will do our best. If we can't answer it ourselves, we will do our best to find the right person in Magento that can answer that question for you. Yeah, so I actually have a GraphQL question, Alex, which is maybe not from a technical point of view, or maybe this is for Misha as well, maybe not from a technical point of view, but from a developer or a project point of view. What do you reckon is the biggest benefit or the biggest thing that GraphQL can bring to a Magento project?
So maybe I can start and then Misha can add something. So first of all, you can create faster front end, and it is achieved by avoiding unnecessary requests to the server. So you just make a single request and you fetch all data in one bulk. And at the same time, you save server resources because you do not spin off Magento for every API request. You spin it off just once and fetch all data again at once. And another benefit which will become available after query API implementation is speed. So we already have prototype. Fortunately, we were not able to deliver it for 2.3, but we have some measurements, and it gives like significant improvement. It's like times faster compared to service contracts. And current implementation of GraphQL, let's say for product, it is also faster than service contracts because it is not based on service contracts, and it uses optimized implementation based on collections. And we also use some data loader techniques where we combine multiple requests to database into a single request, and it basically allows us to get faster performance. And let's say for product endpoint specifically, you also get a new feature which is not available for REST API. You can combine search query with filters in one request. And I'm not sharing screen right now, but basically you have just two parts of the request, and you can use one of those, or you can use both of them. And maybe Misha can also mention how it affects PWA effort, which we have in progress.
Sure, I can maybe jump in and add a couple things. So sorry, by the way, my camera is refusing to work today, so don't know what's up. Anyway, the promise of GraphQL, right, is to deliver a more flexible data retrieval API. So you are able to kind of query across business objects in Magento. That means you can query for a product and then get all of its related products and full data associated with each one of those objects, for example. Or you can jump from a product object to a category object and then see all of the entire resource, right, of a category. So what that means in the end for developers and merchants is faster kind of time to market, lower cost of ownership, easier kind of more flexible ways to develop custom front ends, and this applies to any front end development. Obviously any sort of glass layer front end on a website, mobile development, PWAs, etc. So this is, like Alex said, is meant to support our PWA implementation eventually. So this will be used as a foundational layer for PWAs to build on.
Well, I have a question. As we know, GraphQL has one of the belief that documentation is a first-class citizen. So as we have Swagger for API that generates documentation for REST, and that's included into the dev docs, it's self-generated and published. What is our plan to do for GraphQL? Will we have like a generator and which will output the documentation to dev docs, or we can include the graphical, with the JavaScript library, we can include the graphical to output that documentation, actually have developers just test our GraphQL schema right on the dev docs. I don't know what's the plan for that, or what would the community want.
Actually, as far as I know, we are going to have some instance which will be publicly available, and it should work as sandbox for anyone who wants to try out GraphQL. So that might work. Or we can also obviously consider exposing documentation in similar way as we did it for Swagger, when we just generate it on the fly for a specific instance and display it on our docs.
Yeah, so that's one thing that we really want to have, so that it's available to, for developers to explore the schema and kind of what our GraphQL schema objects look like, right? Without having to have a fully functional Magento instance installed on their own machine. So that would be great. We're working towards making that available on DevDocs eventually. But like Alex showed, GraphQL is self-documenting. So he showed how all our entire schema is every field is documented, and Kevin did a great job doing that, right? However, we do have supporting documentation that's more kind of task and development related. So not necessarily what a field means, but how to accomplish certain tasks, right? And it talks about things like resolvers and attributes and other things that an extension developer might need to know. So that's kind of our current strategy, and we'll obviously can adjust that as a community desires.
Cool. All right. So if, unless there are any other questions that are coming in, either from the chat or from anyone sat next to Eugene, then I would suggest I just say a big thank you very much for coming on and demoing this to us. I think it's going to be pretty important for people coming forward with Magento, with 2.3, and also with agencies to understand how they can extend it and how they can bring in how they're extending Magento, but also include that with GraphQL implementation as well. And so we really appreciate you coming on board. And yeah, as Alex mentioned, if you would like to get involved with the GraphQL side of stuff, that is a possibility now. We have the repository, we also have the channel in Slack. And of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at engcom@magento.com, or you can reach out to any of the team on Twitter. We are relatively active on Twitter. Maybe I should be less active, I guess. And other than that, yeah, big thank you. And if you're at Imagine, please come and talk to us. Give us your feedback, how we're doing, how we can improve, because, yeah, without you guys, without the community, this team doesn't happen, and we need to get you guys involved and you guys happy with it. So yeah, again, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for joining, all our guests today, and we look forward to the next live stream, which hopefully won't be during Imagine. I need to book that properly this time. So thank you very much for joining, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.